I was halfway through loading hay bales onto the flatbed when the unmistakable sound of a car engine revving hard echoed off the hedges near my driveway. At first I thought maybe one of the teenagers down the road had decided to practice drag racing again, but when the sound cut off sharply, I turned around and froze. There, gleaming under the noon sun, was a spotless silver Lexus SUV parked squarely across my driveway, blocking the only way in and out of my property. And the driver's door was left wide open like a trophy display. For a moment I honestly thought maybe she'd had a breakdown. But then she emerged, phone glued to her ear, designer sunglasses perched like armor, and a certain air of practiced indifference in every step she took. I didn't even know her name yet, but in my mind she instantly became Lexus Lady. She didn't even glance at me as she marched across the gravel like it belonged to her, still jabbering into her phone. I watched as she pointed vaguely toward my barn, frowned, then shook her head like the place had offended her. I wiped the sweat off my forehead with my sleeve and walked up slowly, hoping this was just a case of someone lost. "Excuse me," I called, careful to keep my voice even. "You've parked in my driveway. I've got a delivery truck coming through in about 20 minutes. Can you move it?" She finally lowered her phone just enough to make eye contact. "I'll only be a minute," she said, with that tone people use when they don't mean a minute at all. "You don't actually need to go anywhere right now, do you?" And just like that, she turned her back and returned to her call. My farm sits just at the edge of the HOA boundary line, which means I get the worst of both worlds. I'm close enough for them to feel they can police me, but far enough out that I still keep cattle and field. Over the last 2 years I'd gotten used to the occasional snide comments about country smells wafting toward their perfect cul-de-sac. But this was the first time someone had physically blocked my property. I reminded myself to stay calm. Sarcasm had always been my shield, but in situations like this patience mattered. "Actually, yes, I do need to go somewhere," I replied, keeping my voice steady but firm. "And my cows aren't very patient when hay's late. So could you please move your Lexus?" She turned halfway around, lips pressed into something between a smirk and a pout. "You're being dramatic. It's just a car. I'm picking up my friend, she lives 2 houses down, and there was no space on the street. I'll be gone before you know it. Relax." The delivery truck rumbled faintly in the distance, reminding me I didn't have time to debate. "Ma'am, the truck's nearly here. If it can't get through, it can't unload. If it can't unload, your Lexus is going to have about 10 very large, very curious cows inspecting it." That got her attention. She pulled her sunglasses down just enough to peer at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "Excuse me? Did you just threaten me with cows?" "I'm not threatening you. I'm warning you," I said evenly. "They think shiny surfaces taste like salt licks. Chrome trim, mirrors, bumpers, it all looks like entertainment to them. Once they start licking, they don't stop." The way her face drained of color told me she wasn't used to someone meeting her tone with fact instead of apology. She adjusted her purse strap like it gave her authority and huffed. "You wouldn't dare let them near my car. Do you know how expensive that paint is?" At that moment, the hay delivery truck rolled up the lane, driver already honking, needing space. I stepped aside, gesturing at the Lexus. "Your call. Either move it now or I open the gate." She puffed out her chest, muttered something about unbelievable country people, and stomped back to the Lexus. I thought it was over. But instead of starting the engine, she sat in the driver's seat, crossed her arms, and glared at me through the windshield. The truck driver leaned out his window. "You want me to wait, or you want me to back this up half a mile and leave?" I sighed. "Give me a second." I walked over to her window and tapped lightly. She rolled it down 2 inches. "Please move the car. He needs through." She tilted her head, smile curling like she'd just discovered a new game. "No. I want to speak to your HOA president. You people need rules about farm traffic anyway. This road is practically ruined by your tractors." The driver muttered something under his breath that I won't repeat here. I clenched my jaw, realizing she'd turned this into a power play. And she thought she'd won because she had the shinier car and the HOA on speed dial. "All right," I said finally. "You win." I turned to the gate, swung it wide, and gave a sharp whistle. Out in the pasture, several cows lifted their heads, ears flicking, recognizing the sound. The truck driver caught on immediately, grinning so wide his teeth showed. It only took 2 minutes for the first heifer to lumber curiously toward the Lexus. Her big tongue slopped across the chrome grille with a wet smack. The Lexus lady's expression went from smug to horrified in a blink. She shrieked and scrambled out of the car, waving her arms as though shooing pigeons. The cows, delighted by the noise and commotion, treated it like a game. Another joined in, nosing at the side mirror. "Stop them! Do something!" she screeched. "I told you," I said, leaning casually on the fence. "Shiny things are like candy to them. But don't worry, they don't bite. Much." She ran back toward the driver's door, but one of the cows had already slobbered all over the handle, leaving it slick with foam. She gagged in disgust and spun on me. "This is animal harassment. I'll sue you." Behind me, the truck driver chuckled. "Lady, it's a free country. You parked in front of a cow farm. What did you expect?" Her shrill voice rose even higher. "I'll report you to the HOA. To the police. To anyone who will listen." I shrugged. "Please do. I'd love to explain to the sheriff why your Lexus was barricading my delivery." Just then, one of the cows bumped the side mirror, snapping it backward with a crack. She let out a wail that could have rivaled a tornado siren. The irony was too much. I almost laughed, but I forced myself to stay composed. She finally dove into the Lexus, engine roaring, and threw it into reverse so fast gravel spit out from under the tires. She didn't even glance at me as she sped off, shouting something unintelligible out the window. The cows, unbothered, simply ambled back toward the pasture, licking their chops contentedly. The delivery truck rolled forward, driver shaking his head. "That's a first. Usually it's just dogs I gotta watch for. Not people parking their luxury cars in your driveway." I waved him through, already bracing for what I knew was coming. Because people like Lexus Lady never let something go. This wasn't just an inconvenience to her, it was an insult, a challenge. And I could practically hear the gears grinding in her head as she planned her retaliation. The morning after the Lexus incident, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing non-stop on the nightstand. At first, I thought it was just the usual notifications from farm supply groups or maybe a weather alert. But when I groggily picked it up, I saw a string of messages from neighbors and friends that made me sit bolt upright. "Your cows are famous." Karen's ranting in the HOA group chat. "She's blaming you for property damage. She claims you orchestrated the cow attack like some kind of farmer mafia." I rubbed my face and laughed into my pillow. I'd half expected retaliation, but even I hadn't predicted she would leap straight into turning a driveway inconvenience into a full-on conspiracy theory. I threw on my boots and headed outside, coffee in hand, to check on the cattle. They were lounging in the pasture, chewing cud, looking blissfully unaware of their newfound fame. One of them, a big brown cow named Daisy, licked her own nose as if to remind me she was a professional at this business. Before I could finish my coffee, a car pulled up. Not just any car, the Lexus. Still gleaming, but with obvious streaks of dried slobber on the front bumper and one mirror hanging a little looser than before. Out stepped the woman herself, this time armed with a clipboard and a manila folder like she was about to conduct an audit. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Do you know how much it costs to detail a Lexus?" she snapped. "And the mirror? Do you have any idea the expense? Your animals caused extensive damage. I have photos. I have witnesses. You're paying for this." I sipped my coffee and gave her my most patient smile. "Morning to you too. Lovely day for exaggerated claims." Her face tightened. "This is not an exaggeration. This is vandalism, plain and simple. You are responsible for your livestock, and therefore you are responsible for my repair bill." She slapped the folder against her clipboard for emphasis. I took the folder and flipped through. Photos of the slobber, close-ups of the cracked mirror, even a dramatic shot of a cow mid-lick like it was some kind of mugshot. "Looks convincing," I admitted. "But you do realize that you parked illegally on private property, blocked a delivery truck, and ignored multiple warnings, right?" "That doesn't matter," she hissed. "Animals don't have rights. You do. And you failed in your duty of care. This is going to the HOA board, and I guarantee they'll side with me. I'll see to it that your farm circus is held accountable." I almost choked on my coffee. "Farm circus? That's a new one." "Laugh now," she sneered. "But when the HOA fines you and forces you to put up fencing to keep your beasts contained, you won't be so smug." She stomped back to her Lexus, muttering into her phone about emergency board meetings. I shook my head and turned to the cows. "Well, girls, looks like you're defendants in an HOA trial. Better brush up on your courtroom manners." By noon, I had confirmation. She had indeed called an emergency HOA meeting. My neighbor Tom, who quietly detested the HOA but stayed in the group for entertainment, texted me a blow-by-blow. "She's presenting the cow-licking photos as evidence of a public menace. She's demanding you build a 10-foot fence to keep them from roaming onto her luxury vehicles. She's claiming psychological trauma from bovine harassment." That last one nearly made me spit out my sandwich. Trauma? From a slobber mark? But then came the twist. Tom added, "She's also petitioning the board to revoke your property's grandfathered exemption from full HOA membership. She wants you bound by the same rules as them." That was serious. My property predated the HOA, which meant they had no authority over my farm operations. They hated it, but it was untouchable. If she succeeded in convincing them otherwise, I'd be buried under ridiculous fines for everything from tractor noise to the color of my barn roof. So the Lexus incident wasn't just about slobber or mirrors. It was a power move, a wedge she wanted to use to drag my land into their clutches. And that, I realized, was why she hadn't backed down. She wasn't just protecting her Lexus. She was trying to expand her little empire. The meeting was scheduled for that evening at the HOA clubhouse. Against my better judgment, I decided to attend. Not because I believed reason would prevail, but because I refused to let her spin the story without challenge. When I arrived, the place was packed. Apparently, the idea of cows slobbering on a Lexus had drawn a bigger crowd than their usual debates about mailbox paint shade. Karen, yes, by now she'd earned the full Karen title, was already at the front, pacing with the intensity of a prosecutor about to deliver a death blow. She wasted no time. "Neighbors," she began, "we face a grave threat to our community. Yesterday, my luxury vehicle was assaulted. Yes, assaulted by unrestrained livestock. This is not an isolated incident, but a symptom of a larger problem. Our roads, our peace, our property values are under siege from this farm. We cannot allow this menace to continue unchecked." Gasps rippled through the room, though I noticed more than a few stifled chuckles too. She held up a poster-sized printout of a cow midlick, the tongue practically shining under the flash. "This is what we're dealing with. Do you want your children exposed to this? Do you want your guests' vehicles damaged in this way? Today it's my Lexus. Tomorrow it could be your BMW, your Tesla, your Audi. Theatrics worthy of Broadway." I almost applauded. Then it was my turn to speak. I walked calmly to the front, hands in pockets, voice steady. "I appreciate the drama, but let's not forget the facts. Her Lexus was not on the street. It wasn't even in her driveway. It was blocking mine. A delivery truck couldn't pass because she decided her convenience outweighed anyone else's. I warned her about the cows. She chose to ignore me. Actions, consequences." I let the silence hang before adding, "If we're suddenly labeling animal curiosity as assault, I think some of your Labradors and Poodles are in deep legal trouble too. But somehow, I doubt Karen will be printing poster boards of them." That got some laughs. Even the HOA president coughed into his hand to hide a smile. Karen's face flushed crimson. This is not a joke. This man is flaunting our community standards, endangering us all. I turned to the crowd. My farm predates your HOA. You all knew that when you bought your houses. You benefit from my land every time you enjoy open space instead of another row of cookie-cutter garages. And if Karen is traumatized by cow slobber, maybe suburban life isn't the right environment for her. That one hit. I could see it land. People who'd tolerated her antics before were chuckling openly now. The president cleared his throat. Thank you both for your presentations. Given that Mr. Miller's property is outside our governing jurisdiction, this board cannot compel him to change his operations. Karen slammed her folder shut so hard papers flew out. You're making a mistake. You're all making a mistake. The meeting dissolved into side chatter. Some neighbors came up to pat me on the back, whispering things like, "Glad someone finally said it," and "About time she got checked." But as I walked out into the night air, I knew she wasn't done. The defeat in the clubhouse wasn't the end, it was just fuel. People like Karen didn't retreat, they reloaded. When I saw the official county envelope resting against the gatepost, I didn't even bother opening it right away. I knew exactly whose fingerprints were all over it. Karen might have failed to sway the HOA board, but she had found a new weapon: government bureaucracy. She'd gone over the board's head, straight to the zoning office, hoping to strangle my farm in red tape. I carried the envelope into the house, dropped it onto the kitchen table, and fixed myself a second cup of coffee. My cows chewed peacefully outside the window, tails swatting flies, utterly unaware of the paperwork storm brewing against them. Finally, I slit the envelope open. The letter was a complaint notice citing possible nuisance practices related to livestock management and potential threat to community property values. It requested an inspection within 2 weeks and warned of fines if violations were found. The language was vague enough to cover anything, from manure odor to tractors parked too close to the property line. I chuckled bitterly. Karen wasn't just playing for revenge anymore. She was trying to bury me under government paperwork until I either caved or sold out. That afternoon, I got confirmation when my neighbor Tom stopped by. He leaned on the fence, sipping from a soda can, eyes sparkling with gossip. "So, you got the letter, huh?" I raised my eyebrows. "Word travels fast." "Karen's been bragging," he said, grinning. "Told everyone at yoga this morning that she's going to have the county shut you down. Apparently, she's planning to stand out here with a clipboard during the inspection, taking notes for the officer. She thinks she's deputized." I shook my head. Figures. The woman can't handle cows licking her Lexus, so now she wants to reinvent herself as an agricultural law expert. Tom smirked. "You gonna fight it?" "Of course," I said. "I've been through inspections before. My permits are up to date, fencing's solid, manures managed. She can scream nuisance all she wants, but facts are facts." Still, I couldn't ignore the knot in my stomach. Zoning inspectors were thorough, and even though I ran a tight operation, there was always room for them to find something if they wanted. And Karen would be whispering in their ear the entire time. Over the next week, Karen escalated her campaign. She plastered flyers around the cul-de-sac warning of unrestrained livestock hazards. She posted photos of her slobbered Lexus in the community Facebook group with captions like, "Is your family safe?" She even cornered delivery drivers to complain about farm traffic ruining the neighborhood. The cherry on top came one evening when I spotted her Lexus creeping slowly along the edge of my property, windows down, Karen leaning out with her phone camera, narrating like she was hosting a documentary. "Here you see the cows wandering dangerously close to the public road," she said, as though the quiet gravel lane was some kind of freeway. I walked over calmly, leaning against the fence. "Filming another exposé? Don't forget to get Daisy's good side. She's camera shy." Karen jumped, startled that I'd heard, then snapped back with venom. Smile all you want. The county won't be laughing when they see this footage. I tipped my hat. Neither will your Lexus when the cows see it again. Her face turned crimson, and she sped away, tires crunching over the gravel. By the time inspection day arrived, I was ready. I'd mowed, tidied, organized, and triple-checked every record and permit. The cows were brushed and fed, the barn swept clean, even the manure pile properly tarped. If the inspector wanted to find fault, he'd have to invent it. Sure enough, Karen arrived early, Lexus parked deliberately just off my driveway, angled for maximum attention. She stood outside in her oversized sunglasses, clutching her infamous clipboard like a weapon. "This is going to be the end of your little circus," she muttered as I walked past. "Good morning to you too," I said, unbothered. The inspector showed up right on time. Middle-aged, weary-eyed, and clearly already regretting his assignment, he introduced himself as Mr. Halverson. He gave Karen a polite nod before turning to me. "Just here to do the standard check. Shouldn't take long." Karen pounced immediately. "Inspector, you'll want to note the cow's proximity to the road. And the odor. And the constant tractor noise. And the water runoff, I'm sure it's contaminating something. And—" Halverson raised a hand. "Ma'am, I'll handle the assessment. Please step back." She bristled, but obeyed, hovering a few feet away, scribbling furiously on her clipboard. We began the inspection. Halverson measured fence heights, checked gates, peeked inside the barn, examined the manure pile. Each time, he gave a slow nod and muttered, "Looks fine." Karen trailed us like an angry shadow, interjecting whenever possible. "Look at that cow, doesn't she seem aggressive? Isn't that a violation?" Halverson eyed Daisy, who was lazily chewing cud. "That's a cow eating grass, ma'am. And the noise. Did you hear that tractor earlier? That's normal equipment operation. Smell that? That's manure. Isn't that unsanitary?" Halverson pinched the bridge of his nose. "It's a farm." I kept my expression neutral, though inside I was grinning ear to ear. Karen's frustration grew by the minute as every one of her complaints was dismissed as basic agricultural reality. Finally, Halverson turned to me. "Everything seems in order. No violations. You'll get the official notice in the mail, but you're clear." Karen erupted. "What? How can you say that? Look around you. This is a disaster waiting to happen. My Lexus was practically assaulted." Halverson gave her a look that could curdle milk. "Ma'am, unless you can provide evidence of a genuine zoning violation, there's nothing more I can do here." She sputtered, but he was already shaking my hand and heading back to his car. I escorted him out, thanking him for his time. Karen stomped her foot like a child denied candy. "This isn't over," she hissed. "If the county won't listen, I'll go higher. I'll go to the state. I'll go to the media. People need to know what kind of barbarism is happening here." I leaned against the fence and smiled. "Careful, Karen. If you shout loud enough, folks might just hear about how you parked your Lexus in a farmer's driveway and lost a battle to a cow." Her eyes flashed with fury, and she stormed back to her Lexus, slamming the door so hard it rattled. She peeled away in a spray of gravel, humiliated but clearly not defeated. That night I thought I'd earned a brief reprieve. The cows were calm, the farm quiet, and the zoning scare had fizzled. But then Tom texted me again. "Check the neighborhood Facebook page. You're trending." I opened it and nearly laughed out loud. Karen had uploaded a dramatic post titled, "The Farm Menace Exposed." It featured photos, videos, and even a shaky clip of Daisy licking the Lexus. She framed it as a viral scandal, begging people to share before it's too late. And the kicker? Some local reporter had actually commented, asking for an interview. Karen had failed to bury me in paperwork, but now she was trying something even more dangerous, dragging the cows and me into the spotlight of public opinion. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile spreading across my face. If she wanted a media circus, she was about to learn that I was very good at putting on a show. Because if she thought cows licking her Lexus was headline-worthy, she hadn't seen anything yet. By the time the reporter's sedan rolled up my gravel lane, I knew exactly how this was going to go. Karen had baited the press with her dramatic Facebook posts, and now the local news smelled a story. Lexus Lady versus the Cow Farm had a certain ring to it, especially for the kind of evening broadcast that thrived on neighborhood drama. I leaned on the fence as the reporter stepped out. She was young, eager, and clearly hoping this would be her big break. A cameraman followed, lugging gear and looking like he regretted all his life choices. "You must be Mr. Miller," she said, offering a bright smile. "Thanks for agreeing to talk. We're doing a story on the recent incident between your cattle and a neighbor's luxury vehicle." I almost laughed. "You make it sound like my cows staged a heist." She chuckled awkwardly, then glanced down at her notes. "We'd just like to get both sides of the story. Your neighbor claims the cows are a hazard, that your farm is lowering property values, and that the community is at risk." As if on cue, Karen's Lexus appeared at the end of the lane. She parked at a dramatic angle, doors swinging open like she was stepping onto a red carpet. Sunglasses, clipboard, perfect hair, she was ready for her spotlight. "Ah, there she is now," the reporter said, relieved. Karen marched up and shook the reporter's hand like she was meeting royalty. "Thank you for coming. Someone finally taking this seriously. You wouldn't believe the nightmare I've endured. That man's animals assaulted my car, cost me thousands, and the HOA refuses to act. But the public deserves to know." She gestured toward the Lexus as though unveiling a crime scene. "Look at the damage. Slobber stains, scratches, a broken mirror. And the trauma, every time I drive past that pasture, I shudder. No woman should feel unsafe in her own neighborhood." The cameraman raised an eyebrow, but dutifully filmed as Karen posed beside her car, stroking it like an injured pet. Then it was my turn. I waved toward the pasture, where Daisy and the others were peacefully chewing cud. "These are my so-called criminals. Terrifying, aren't they?" The reporter tried not to smile. "Could you walk us through what happened?" "Simple," I said. She parked her Lexus across my driveway, blocked a delivery truck, and ignored repeated warnings that the cows might get curious. "They did what cows do, they licked. If that's an attack, then my farm is guilty of excessive friendliness." Karen snapped, "Don't minimize this. Those beasts are dangerous." I tilted my head. "Dangerous? Daisy here weighs 1,200 pounds, but she's never harmed anyone. The only thing she's guilty of is sloppy kisses." The cameraman snorted, quickly pretending to cough. The reporter fought to keep a straight face. Karen, sensing the narrative slipping, upped the theatrics. "He's mocking me. This is serious. He's negligent, irresponsible, and his farm is a menace to civilized living. If the HOA won't act, then maybe public outrage will." The reporter asked gently, "So your main concern is safety?" "And property values," Karen added quickly. "You think anyone wants to buy a home next to slobbering cattle? This is a community, not a barnyard." I shrugged. "Funny, when I bought this farm, it was already a barnyard. The HOA came later. If they wanted peace and quiet, maybe they shouldn't have built houses next to a working farm." The interview wrapped, the cameraman clearly amused, the reporter clearly torn between drama and reality. As they packed up, Karen pulled the reporter aside, whispering furiously, gesturing toward me. Whatever she said, the reporter only nodded politely before leaving. That evening, the segment aired on the 6 o'clock news. Karen got her airtime, pacing dramatically beside her Lexus, warning viewers of unrestrained livestock terrorizing the community. Then they cut to me, standing calmly by the fence with Daisy licking the camera tripod in the background. My line, "If cow slobber is a crime, we're all in trouble," closed the piece. The reaction was immediate. The station's Facebook page filled with comments. Some mocked Karen. "Imagine calling the cops on a cow tongue." Others sided with me. "He was there first, leave the farmer alone." A few defended Karen, but they were drowned out by memes of cows photoshopped into police lineup. Tom texted me a screenshot. Daisy's face on a wanted poster, captioned Slobber Bandit. I nearly fell off my chair laughing. But Karen wasn't laughing. The next morning, she stormed into my driveway in her Lexus, engine revving like she meant to intimidate me. She leaned out the window, face flushed with rage. "You think this is funny? You humiliated me on live television." I sipped my coffee. "I didn't humiliate you. The cows did. I just let them be themselves." She slammed the steering wheel. "I'm not done. You'll regret making me look foolish. I'll take this higher than you can imagine." I raised an eyebrow. "What's higher than the 6 o'clock news? CNN? The United Nations?" She didn't answer. She just sped off, tires spitting gravel. By lunchtime, I got my answer. A lawyer's letter arrived by courier, hand-delivered with a flourish. Karen was suing me in small claims court for damages to her Lexus, emotional distress, and loss of enjoyment of community life. The figure? $10,000. I laughed so hard I scared the chickens. 10 grand for a slobber stain and a cracked mirror. But the more I read, the clearer it became. Karen wasn't aiming to win money. She was aiming to drag me into court, force me to waste time and resources, and keep the spotlight on herself. I called my own lawyer, who nearly chuckled himself out of breath when I explained. "Don't worry," he said. "Judges don't like frivolous claims. We'll counter with the fact she trespassed on your property, blocked a delivery, and ignored warnings. This could backfire on her." Still, I knew better than to underestimate Karen's persistence. She'd already dragged me through the HOA, the zoning office, and the media circus. Now she was escalating to court. Each move bigger than the last, just as I expected. The court date was set for 3 weeks out. In the meantime, Karen doubled down. She staged photo ops with her Lexus, now perpetually polished to gleam like a mirror. She handed out flyers claiming justice for Lexus victims. She even created a petition demanding the county declare a no livestock zone within a mile of her cul-de-sac. But she made one mistake. She underestimated how much people love a good underdog story. By the second week, memes of Daisy and her slobbery crime spree had gone viral. Someone even printed t-shirts with Daisy's face and the slogan, "Free the Lick Squad." Orders poured in from across the county. When Karen discovered the shirts, she nearly exploded. She confronted me one evening at the fence, waving one like it was contraband. "This is harassment. You're profiting off my suffering." I grinned. "Actually, the proceeds go to the 4-H club. The kids love it. Maybe you should buy one. Support the community." Her jaw clenched so hard I thought she might crack a tooth. She turned on her heel, muttering about lawsuits for defamation, as she stormed back to the Lexus. Court day dawned clear and bright, the kind of morning that makes you wonder why anyone would choose to spend it inside a stale, fluorescent-lit building. But that was exactly where I was headed. Karen's lawsuit had officially made its way onto the county docket, and now we were both due to stand before a judge. I dressed the part. Clean jeans, button-down shirt, boots polished just enough to show I respected the process without pretending to be someone I wasn't. My lawyer, a dry-witted man named Carson, met me out front of the courthouse. He carried a thin folder under his arm and gave me a nod. "Morning. You ready for the circus?" I smiled. "I've been rehearsing my lines." Karen arrived moments later, Lexus parked illegally right up front in a spot clearly marked, "Judge only." She stepped out in a cream-colored suit, clipboard clutched like a briefcase, and a permanent sneer plastered on her face. Trailing behind her was another lawyer, a flashy type in a pinstripe suit, gold watch glinting, the kind of guy who probably billed by the smirk. As we filed inside, I heard Karen whisper loudly enough for the hallway to hear, "Don't worry, I'm going to bankrupt him." Carson leaned over to me and whispered back, "She's paying that guy $500 an hour to chase cow slobber. Let's see who bankrupts who." The courtroom was nearly full, not with interested parties but with locals curious about the drama. Word had spread, and apparently Lexus versus the cows had become the hottest show in town. I even spotted Tom in the back row, grinning like it was his birthday. The judge, a weary man who looked like he'd seen every petty feud in the county twice over, called the case. Ms. Karen versus Mr. Miller, claim of property damage and emotional distress. He gave us both a long, pointed look. Let's keep this civil. Karen's lawyer strutted forward first. Your Honor, this is a case of negligence. My client, a respected member of the community, suffered significant property damage when Mr. Miller failed to restrain his livestock. These animals assaulted her vehicle, leaving it marred, damaged, and unfit for use without costly repairs. Furthermore, my client has endured ongoing emotional distress, a decline in community standing, and a loss of peace of mind. He gestured dramatically toward the Lexus, which Karen had somehow managed to have parked outside in full view of the courtroom window. The evidence is plain to see. Karen stood, holding up her photos like she was unveiling proof of a government conspiracy. This is my Lexus. Look at what those beasts did. Slobber everywhere, scratches, a broken mirror. I have spent thousands trying to restore it, and I still feel unsafe every time I pass his property. This man is a menace to our neighborhood. The judge pinched the bridge of his nose. Thank you. Mr. Miller, your response. Carson stepped up, calm and measured. Your Honor, my client's cows did indeed lick the vehicle. But let's not forget the context. Ms. Karen parked her car illegally across my client's driveway, blocking a delivery truck and trespassing on his private property. He warned her explicitly about the risk. She chose to ignore him. The cows, being curious creatures, licked what was in front of them. If anyone is to blame for this incident, it is Ms. Karen's refusal to move her vehicle when asked. He handed over documents, photos of my driveway blocked, testimony from the delivery driver, records showing my farm's compliance with zoning and livestock laws. Furthermore, Carson added, the alleged damages are wildly inflated. Estimates from independent mechanics show repairs would cost a fraction of what Ms. Karen claims. As for emotional distress, well, we leave that to the court's discretion. The judge nodded, flipping through the papers. Ms. Karen, why did you park in Mr. Miller's driveway? Karen bristled. There was no room on the street, and I was only going to be a minute. He overreacted. The judge arched an eyebrow. And when asked to move the vehicle? Her lawyer jumped in. She did eventually move it, Your Honor. Yes, I interjected calmly. After the cows had already introduced themselves. That drew muffled laughter from the back row. The judge banged his gavel lightly. Order. Karen's lawyer, sensing the tide turning, tried a new tactic. Your Honor, even if my client was briefly in the wrong, Mr. Miller failed in his duty to restrain dangerous livestock. These are large animals. Imagine if a child had been nearby. Carson didn't miss a beat. Your Honor, these cows are contained within my client's fenced property. They did not escape. They did not chase anyone. They merely licked what was parked directly against the fence line. If a child had pressed themselves against that fence, they might have gotten licked too. That's hardly an assault. The judge rubbed his temples. I never thought I'd hear the phrase, hardly an assault, applied to a cow tongue, but here we are. Karen, red-faced, stood again. He's mocking me. Everyone's mocking me. I can't live like this. People laugh when I drive. They call me Lexus Lady. They made t-shirts. This has ruined my reputation. The judge looked at her over his glasses. That may be unfortunate, ma'am, but reputation is not the jurisdiction of this court. We are here for damages to a vehicle and alleged emotional distress directly tied to the incident. At that moment, Carson pulled out his trump card. Your Honor, we also submit a counterclaim. My client lost income when the delivery truck was delayed, and he has endured harassment from Ms. Karen, including unfounded complaints to the zoning board and attempts to drag his farm into HOA jurisdiction. The judge's eyes sharpened. Is that true, Miss Karen? She sputtered. I was only doing what's best for the community. The judge sighed, clearly fed up. Here's my ruling. Miss Karen, you parked illegally on private property, ignored warnings, and suffered the natural consequence of your own decision. The court finds no basis for your claim of negligence. Your request for damages is denied. Furthermore, I find merit in the counterclaim. You will reimburse Mr. Miller for the cost of the delivery delay and cease all frivolous complaints against his farm. Case dismissed. The gavel came down, and the room erupted in murmurs. Tom clapped loudly from the back until the bailiff glared at him. Karen stood frozen, face pale, mouth open like she'd just swallowed a lemon whole. Her lawyer packed up his papers in silence, clearly eager to escape. As I walked out, neighbors patted me on the back, grinning, whispering things like, "About time," and "She had it coming." The courthouse steps felt like a victory parade. Karen, however, wasn't done. She stormed past me, muttering, "This isn't over. You humiliated me in front of everyone. I'll find another way. You'll regret this." I tipped my hat. "Maybe focus on parking lessons first." She shrieked something unintelligible and dove into her Lexus, peeling away so fast she nearly clipped the judge's car. Carson shook his head. "Mark my words, she's not letting this go. But the more she fights, the deeper she digs her hole." I smiled. "That's fine. I've got patience. And cows. Lots of cows." Back home, Daisy greeted me at the fence, licking my sleeve as if to seal the victory. I scratched her head and laughed. "Well, girl, looks like you won in court too." The hum of Karen's Lexus outside my gate that night was low, steady, and wrong. Most people who drove past at midnight had somewhere to be. Karen didn't. She had nowhere to be but here, circling like a vulture, headlights off as if she were pulling off a military operation. I stayed inside, lights off, watching from the upstairs window. The cattle stirred uneasily in the pasture, tails flicking, ears twitching. They sensed something too. I expected her to eventually drive off in a storm of gravel, but instead the engine cut. A car door shut quietly. Then, the faint scrape of shoes on gravel. I grabbed a flashlight and slipped downstairs, staying quiet. I cracked the door and listened. The sound was unmistakable, metal rattling against metal. She was fiddling with my gate latch. I flicked the flashlight on and shouted, "Lose something?" Karen froze in the beam like a deer. She was dressed head to toe in black athletic wear, as if she'd just come from a spy movie. Her hand was on the gate chain, a bolt cutter gleaming in the other. She squawked like a startled bird. I was just checking for safety violations." "At midnight?" I asked. "In yoga pants?" She straightened, trying to regain composure. "You don't understand. Your animals are dangerous. They could escape and hurt someone. I was being proactive. By cutting my gate open?" She dropped the bolt cutter with a clatter. "That's not what this looks like." "Oh, it looks exactly like what it looks like," I said. "You were about to let my cows loose, probably hoping they'd wander onto the road so you could blame me. Clever plan, except for the part where I caught you." Her face twisted, and for a second I thought she might swing at me. Instead, she hissed, "You think you're untouchable. But if those animals get out, the HOA, the county, even the police will shut you down. No one will believe it wasn't your fault." I stepped closer, keeping my voice calm. "No one? Karen, the whole neighborhood already thinks you're one bad day away from renting a bulldozer and leveling my barn yourself. You sure you want to test how much credibility you've got left?" She glared at me, lips trembling, before snatching up her bolt cutter and storming back to the Lexus. Tires spun as she tore away, red taillights vanishing down the road. The next morning, I called Carson, my lawyer. She tried to sabotage the farm. I caught her at the gate with bolt cutters. He whistled. "Now that's escalation. You want to press charges." I considered it. A trespassing charge would stick. Maybe even attempted criminal mischief. But then I pictured Karen in court again, feeding off the attention like it was oxygen. No, charges would just give her another platform. Not yet, I said. But I'm not letting her slide either. If she wants to play games, I'll make sure every move she makes ends up backfiring. Sure enough, she wasn't finished. By the end of the week, the HOA had circulated a petition titled Community Safety Against Livestock Hazards. Her fingerprints were all over it. She knocked on doors, made dramatic speeches, and waved photos of the Lexus like they were crime scene evidence. Tom reported back gleefully. She told Mrs. Henderson the cows almost trampled her. Mrs. Henderson saw Daisy last week. She laughed so hard she nearly fell off her porch swing. Still, Karen gathered signatures. Maybe a dozen households signed out of politeness, but most refused. Some even sent me screenshots of her texts, begging them to join her movement. That's when I decided to flip the script. If Karen wanted to make this about community safety, then I'd show the community what safety actually looked like. On Saturday, I hosted an open farm day. Kids, parents, neighbors, all invited to come meet the cows, pet them, and see how the farm worked. I printed flyers. Family farm fun. See the famous Lexus licking cows. The turnout was incredible. Parents brought their children, cameras flashed, and Daisy became a local celebrity. Kids squealed with delight as she licked their hands, faces lighting up. I served lemonade, gave tours, and explained how the farm operated responsibly, cleanly, and safely. By the end of the day, half the cul-de-sac was posting photos of their kids hugging my cows with captions like, "Best Saturday ever." Karen showed up halfway through, her Lexus screeching to a halt at the curb. She stormed across the lawn, face red as a fire hydrant. "This is outrageous. You're exploiting those animals for publicity." "Funny," I said loudly enough for the crowd to hear. "I thought I was just proving they weren't the slobbering monsters you claimed." The crowd laughed. Parents rolled their eyes at her theatric. A few muttered openly about how she needed a hobby. Karen tried to shout over them. "Don't be fooled. This man is dangerous. Those cows will destroy our neighborhood." At that exact moment, Daisy ambled up and licked Karen's shoulder. A wet, sloppy, affectionate lick. The crowd erupted in laughter. Someone snapped a photo, and within hours it was plastered online. Karen scowling in disgust while Daisy looked blissfully happy beside her. The caption? True love. By the end of the weekend, the photo had gone viral. People started tagging it with jokes like, "Karen found her soulmate and guess who's the real menace now?" I thought maybe that humiliation would slow her down. Instead, it drove her over the edge. 3 nights later, I woke again to noises outside. This time, not just the hum of an engine, but loud banging. I grabbed my flashlight and ran to the barn. What I found made my blood run cold. Karen had parked the Lexus directly against the barn doors, blocking them shut. And she was dumping something across the gravel, bags of salt, ripped open and scattered like a trail. The cows, drawn by the smell, were pressing against the fence, eager to lick. She turned, eyes wild, hair a mess, shouting, "Let's see how you like your precious barn destroyed. Let's see the county ignore this." I stepped forward, flashlight beam steady. "Karen, stop. You're playing with fire. If those cows get sick from too much salt, that's on you. And trust me, the sheriff won't ignore it." She dropped the bag and sneered. "You won't call anyone. Because then the whole county will know you can't control your animals." I didn't flinch. "I don't have to call anyone. The cameras will do it for me." Her face fell. She looked up, realizing for the first time that I'd mounted security cameras around the barn after her midnight stunt. The red lights blinked steadily, recording every second. Karen's voice cracked. "Delete it. You can't prove anything." "Oh, I can. And if you push me, I'll let the whole world see you trying to sabotage a barn with a Lexus and a salt trail." She stood frozen, breathing hard, before scrambling back into her car and peeling away into the night. I stood there, watching the cows lick harmlessly at the spilled salt, and realized the feud had reached a new level. Karen wasn't just embarrassing herself anymore. She was dangerous. The next morning, I saved the footage to 3 separate drives and called Carson. "We've got her on tape," I said. "And I think it's time the sheriff got involved." Because Karen might have thought she was playing the long game. But she'd just walked into a trap of her own making. I didn't sleep the night after catching Karen on camera with her salt sabotage stunt. I replayed the footage over and over, making sure every detail was clear. Her Lexus parked against the barn doors, the bags of salt ripped open, her voice shrieking about destroying my farm. It wasn't just petty harassment anymore. It was calculated sabotage, and she'd crossed the line from nuisance into crime. At dawn, I called Carson. He listened quietly as I explained, then said, "This isn't HOA drama anymore. This is criminal. Call the sheriff. Bring the footage. Let her dig her own grave." By mid-morning, a county sheriff's SUV rolled up my lane. It was the same deputy who'd once chuckled when I told him about the cows licking Karen's Lexus. This time, his face was harder, professional. "Heard you've got something we need to see," he said. I led him inside, set up the footage on my laptop, and hit play. He watched silently, arms folded. When the part came where Karen scattered the salt and shouted about ruining my barn, his eyebrows rose. When she realized the cameras were recording, he shook his head slowly. "Well," he said finally, "that's open and shut. Trespassing, attempted property damage, reckless endangerment. At minimum." A strange calm settled over me. "So what happens next?" "We'll pay her a visit," he said. "You'll get a case number. And if she keeps it up, we'll have her in front of a judge faster than you can say Lexus." The relief was real, but so was the unease. Karen wasn't the type to accept defeat quietly. Still, I knew I couldn't let her think intimidation worked. For once, I wasn't the one playing the long game. The law was. That afternoon, as if on cue, Karen marched into my driveway again, Lexus gleaming in the sun, her face red and tight. She didn't know yet that the sheriff had already been briefed. She stormed out, waving another stack of papers. "You think you're clever with your little cameras?" she snapped. "Well, 2 can play that game. I've filed for an injunction. You'll be forced to relocate those cows. Everyone's sick of them slobbering on cars." I folded my arms. "Funny you bring up cars. The sheriff's on his way right now. Seems they're more interested in what your Lexus was doing at my barn at 2 in the morning." For once, Karen's confidence cracked. Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again. That's a lie. You can't prove anything." "I don't have to," I said evenly. "The cameras did." She spun on her heel, climbed back into her Lexus, and roared away. Minutes later, the sheriff's SUV passed her on the road, lights flashing. I couldn't see her face as they pulled her over, but I didn't need to. I knew. By evening, word had spread across the neighborhood like wildfire. Tom texted me first. "Sheriff pulled her over. She was screaming on the curb." Another neighbor followed. "Deputy had to tell her 3 times to calm down. She's officially lost it." Karen wasn't arrested yet. The sheriff filed charges for trespassing and reckless endangerment, gave her a stern warning, and confiscated the bolt cutters from her Lexus. But the damage to her reputation was irreversible. And that's when the real twist hit. The HOA board, sick of Karen dragging their name through the mud, called an emergency meeting. This time not about me, but about her. The same president who'd once coughed into his hand to hide a laugh now stood at the front of the clubhouse, addressing the crowd. "Neighbors, we've all witnessed Ms. Karen's repeated actions against Mr. Miller. She has disrupted meetings, abused process, and embarrassed this community in front of the media. Effective immediately, the board is voting to censure her and strip her of her committee positions." The room erupted in applause. Karen, seated near the front, leapt to her feet, shouting, "You can't do this! I am the HOA. I built this community. Without me, you're nothing." The president's voice was cool. "Without you, we'll have peace. Please leave." I stood in the back, arms folded, watching her storm out, eyes darting around as though searching for an ally. No one followed. For the first time, she was truly alone. In the days that followed, Karen's empire crumbled. The lawsuit dismissed, the HOA stripping her power, the sheriff keeping a close eye on her antics. Even her Lexus bore the scars of her obsession. Dried streaks from the salt bags, a still loose mirror she hadn't fixed, and the faint, unmistakable marks of Daisy's enthusiastic tongue. But she wasn't done, not entirely. The last play came quietly, almost pitifully. A letter in my mailbox, handwritten in looping, angry script. You think you've won. But you haven't. Everyone will always remember the cows slobbering on my Lexus. My reputation is ruined, and it's your fault. One day you'll slip, and when you do, I'll be there. I read it twice, then tossed it into the burn barrel. Some battles end with a bang, some with a whimper. This was both. Weeks later, life settled. The cows returned to their routine, unbothered by human drama. The neighborhood kids still came by, bringing carrots and laughing as Daisy slurped their hands. The viral memes faded, though now and then I'd catch someone wearing a Free the Lick Squad t-shirt at the grocery store. Karen? She kept to herself. Her Lexus, once polished daily, now sat dusty in her driveway. She drove less, spoke less, appeared only rarely at HOA meetings. The queen bee had lost her crown, and the hive was better for it. One evening, as the sun set over the pasture, Tom leaned on the fence beside me. "Think she's finally done?" he asked. I watched Daisy lick the salt block contentedly, tail swishing in the golden light. Done with me? Maybe. Done with life? Never. People like Karen don't quit. They just simmer. He chuckled. Well, if she ever tries again, you've got 30 cows and half the county on your side. I smiled. That's the thing about people like her. They think power is about control. But real power? It's about patience. And cows have more patience than anyone I know. We stood there in the quiet, listening to the low murmur of the herd, the air finally clear of drama. The war of the Lexus and the cows was over. Not because I'd beaten her, but because she'd beaten herself. All I had to do was wait. And that, I thought, was the beauty of playing the long game.